All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Glenn Engelberg, and I am the Assistant Director of Recruitment for the GEM, or Global Energy Management Program with University of Colorado, Denver. And thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Putting the Global in Global Energy Management, featuring GEM faculty member, Dr. Maen Husein. Today, we are going to go ahead and discuss a little more about some of the unique features of the GEM program, specifically that specifically pertain to international students here. So these include the hybrid online format, along with the global perspective of the curriculum and a few other factors and elements of the program. To also go ahead and help discuss this, we will have Dr. Maen Husein, GEM faculty members here since 2009, since the program began, and we're very excited to have him here today. He offers a very unique perspective because of his professional and educational experience abroad, and also has worked, with, well, just about every student in the program here because he's been here since the beginning. So today I'm going to go into further detail about many of the benefits of the GEM program, specifically for international students. You can give some examples of international students as well that have gone through the program. But before we get started today, I'd like to go ahead and give a quick agenda about today's presentation. That'll be about 50 minutes to an hour or so, and then have Dr. Hussein give a quick introduction of himself as well. So as you can see here, we're going to go over a few facts of the program and a quick overview for a few minutes, because I know everyone's familiarity with the program may be a little different. Then we're going to go ahead and discuss the curriculum on a global scale, along with some success with international students, some different examples, and also intertwined with this, I'm going to have several prepared questions for Dr. Hussein, who will discuss some stories, examples from his experience that should be helpful for everyone here to learn. Then we're going to go into a little bit of some of the details and commonly asked questions for application, details for international students, and then we should have a few minutes for a quick question and answer session at the end as well. But before we go ahead and get to that here, I want to give a quick background of Dr. Hussein, and then have you hear from the gentleman himself about his background. He has a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate in chemical engineering, respectively from Jordan University as well as from McGill University in Montreal. Both schools are abroad. And as I mentioned, he's been teaching the program here since its beginning 10 years ago, and is currently teaching GEM 6300, which is the technical aspects of energy science. He's also currently the professor of the Department of Chemical and Petroleum Engineering at University of Calgary in Alberta. And interestingly enough, he's currently teaching abroad in China until summer of this year. So I'm sure we'll look forward to hearing a little bit about what that's been like from him as well. He also co-founded and was the Chief Technology Officer, CTO of Fluids. And without further ado here, I would like to go ahead and have Dr. Hussein quickly introduce himself, with maybe obviously his name, a little bit more about his background, and experience with the GEM program. Dr. Hussein, if you will.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for having me, and I'd like to welcome all your attendees. Again, my name is Maen Husein. I'm a professor with the University of Calgary, Chemical and Petroleum Engineering, and I've been with the University of Calgary for 15 years. And before joining the University of Calgary, I worked for 2 years in power system simulation, which is our company, or our mandate was to manufacture and build a replica of control rooms in nuclear power generation stations. And that is for training purposes and accident training applications. And I've finished my PhD in 2002 and started my master's in 95. And that was the same year that I finished my Bachelor's of Science. I've been to different places around the globe. I lived in Jordan, and I lived in Montreal in Canada, and lived in the West, which is Calgary. And I've also worked I'm currently working in China, which gives a little bit of a global perspective. And for me, it was very beneficial to be in different places around the globe.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that introduction there. And I know we all look forward to hearing a few more stories and a little more about your experience with the program as well. So thank you so much for going ahead and doing that. In the meanwhile here, as well with the program, I know I want to go ahead and start off by discussing a little more about the GEM program first, and then we'll get into some prepared questions for Dr. Hussein here in a little bit. But as far as a quick overview of the program, I think first and foremost, our master's degree here is 100% energy focused. So it deals with all different energy fields from oil and gas, renewable, utility, but the important part is that it is the entire energy spectrum on a leadership, business, and finance acumen for those who are looking to take that next step as directors, managers, start their own companies, consultants, anywhere in the energy spectrum. And there's definitely a very global perspective on the energy industry, not just with the demographic and experience of the faculty and students here, but also a lot of the case studies, different examples, and how we understand that true interdependence of how the program is structured. So that is definitely a big part of it as well. In addition to that, we have a blended curriculum delivery that I'll go over here in a little bit, where it allows students, whether you are in the US or many of our students which are internationally based, can continue to work full-time while still going ahead and doing our program part-time and still finish in 18 months. In addition, we have a strong partnership with the energy industry, and I'll give some examples in a little bit here about some different companies that our students have worked with, including several international companies as well, and some success stories there too. Also, as I believe I mentioned earlier, we have started the program in 2009. Dr. Hussein should know he was here for our first cohort, and I'm very glad that he's still here with us, doing a great job. And we actually have our 21st cohort, believe it or not, that is starting here in July of this year. And I will go over some of those application steps in a little bit as well, too. We have over 400 students and alumni spread all across the globe. As you can see right there, we have students from South Africa, Pakistan, the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Norway, Ghana, Italy, and everywhere in between. So we truly have a very global perspective, and as I mentioned, I'll give a couple more current examples as well. I know even in a class that I briefly sat in, just to get the student perspective, a few weeks ago, we had students from anywhere from South Africa to South Korea, even Bangladesh. So, a lot of different regions. That was just in that one class alone. So it's very exciting to go ahead and see that. And here too, as you can see, we do have a blended curriculum delivery that we'll go over a little bit. And I'm going to talk a little more about the in-person part here, where you get the chance to come, meet your cohort, everything with that as well. But here are just a couple other great features of the program. And speaking of which, as you can see in the last one there, I would like to go ahead and talk a little more about the faculty experience here that we have with the program as well. So actually on that note, if we're going to go ahead and start with our questions here. And the first one that we have here is, of course, for Dr. Hussein. So Dr. Hussein, can you go ahead and talk about what you think is specifically most impressive about the GEM faculty?
I have to say, when I was approached 2009, I was very excited to join the program. And one of the reasons that I was very excited about joining the program is the level of expertise and the type of professionals the program had as professors since day one, since the inception of the program. And I felt it was a very good environment to grow, even for myself. I was dealing with professionals all the time, and I'm still dealing with professionals all the time. Everybody is an expert in the area. They're handpicked and they're selected so that they can be people with very comprehensive background when it comes to education. But at the same time, they also have the work experience, a very long record of very high achievements. So for me, that was a very good environment to grow. And as I said, I grew within the program and I learned a lot from the program, and I also projected from my own experience.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think that is definitely very valuable. And to kind of comment on that too, our faculty here are truly experts in their field. Dr. Hussein's a perfect example. It's not just someone who just been a couple of years in the industry. I mean, in fact, our instructors on average have at least 15 years of energy experience. So they really are practitioners, in their particular field, which I think is very helpful for our students as well too, to go ahead and understand a little more of. So yeah, thank you so much for going ahead and sharing that. And then here, actually, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little more about our next feature here, which is going to go ahead and not just be the GEM difference, but also, in addition to what makes it stand apart, the blended curriculum for the Cohort Weekend. So I want to touch on this a little bit because this is a very unique part of the program. So here with it, we actually will go ahead and have a 4-day period where I know Dr. Hussein will talk about this in a moment, but to give you a quick overview, we have a Friday through Monday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, where students will come here during the first part of their 10-week term to, as you can see, get a lot of their lecture hours. We even have some site tours, like we have one for the Panasonic factory here coming up in April. There's some social events, a lot of networking, and we even have something called an executive in residence program, which is really exciting, where we will go ahead and have a C-suite, CEO, director type professional that will come here to do some specific group lunches. You can sign up for one-on-one sessions, really just to understand more about that executive level mindset. And actually our current one is Yan Lee, who is the director of commercial solar for North America with Panasonic that we have. And actually on that note too as well, Dr. Hussein, can you go ahead and touch on a little more about the importance of those first 4 days in person for that cohort and why you think that's so important and critical to the success of GEM students?
For me, this is a very important in many aspects. I take the 4-day opportunity to get to know the students, to ask about their background, to understand where they come from, their interest in the program, where do they see themselves being in 3-4 years from today, what made them enroll in the program. And I ask about their background and whether they have taken courses in a similar topic in the old days or not. And then I take this opportunity to actually cater to each one of the students, but at the same time, make sure that the people who had seen the material before still are enthusiastic and interested about seeing it again presented differently. So that's one aspect. And another aspect, I also try to present the toughest component of the course during the first 4 days. And that had to do in that specific course, which is the energy or the technical aspects of energy science. It has to do with the calculations that I expect the students to be able to do and to be able to perform. And we indeed practice tutorial during the first 4 days. And at the end of the first 4 days, I'm satisfied and happy that I presented most of the most challenging material and had sat with the students and had the opportunity to guide them through understanding the different concepts that are presented.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you bring up a really good point about going over some of the critical or harder material in the first, during those first 4 days, because I'm sure as you can attest that we go ahead and have students from all different backgrounds in our program here, ranging from engineers to people with marketing backgrounds, finance backgrounds. So I'm sure you'd agree, Dr. Hussein, that it's probably also very helpful for you to go ahead and get a feel, right, for like the entire spectrum of everyone's learning curve, and then that will go ahead and influence kind of the next 10 weeks of the online part as well too. So I'm sure it's probably pretty helpful on a couple different fronts that we have there. And actually, something too I wanted to mention here. Oh, and actually, before I go ahead and go into this slide, it looks like we have a question here from one of our participants with that. So if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead and hold off questions until the end. I believe there is a chat box. You can go ahead and type in your question, and we will definitely get to that at the very end of the presentation. But thank you, though, for your interest in that. But in the meanwhile, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the online part, because after those first 4 days, you'll go ahead and have the next 10 weeks online, and I'll have Dr. Hussein talk about this in a second here. But essentially, as you can see here, it's something you can do on your own schedule. It is still very highly interactive. And I think one of the important things is that you get that foundation of those first 4 days in person. So a lot of the students get to meet each other. They get more comfortable with each other, get a better feel for everything. And I think that makes them more comfortable in the online classroom, and makes it more collaborative too, with the discussions and everything. So I guess actually on that topic specifically, Dr. Hussein, can you go ahead and discuss a little more about the flexibility of how your online classroom works and how international students are able to do their work online?
I feel like we're in a classroom, and I had many office hours that's performed online with the Zoom as our platform. There is an ease of communication, and there is a window for chatting with the students, but at the same time you can use it as a whiteboard, blackboard. You explain things, and there is that flexibility where the students can interrupt, ask questions as if we're sitting in the same in one classroom. So I don't feel that there is a difference between me teaching to the students directly in a classroom or using the online platform that we have for the GEM program. And in addition to that, we can record any of the meetings. So if I have an office hour, for example, that was requested by 4 or 5 students, I can record that and share it with everybody else. So most of the students, from my experience, most of the questions that the other students had thought of are actually asked from the 3 or 4 students that could act as a representative for the whole class. And most of the times I'll get emails saying that you've answered my question, I thought of this question, and luckily enough it was asked, and I've seen my answer to it. So thanks for sharing the recording. So it's just a wonderful experience. I think.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you so much for that there. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, I think as Dr. Hussein was mentioning there too, that and the way our program is set up here, we go ahead and have it where, yeah, the online part is truly flexible. There is that Zoom feature. And actually something that we do too as well that I did not mention before is that right before those first 4 days here, when your first class begins, we also do a little of a tutorial session too of how the online classroom works, what it looks like, even before you actually begin your first class on that Friday. So you don't begin from scratch, and you definitely have a lot of support from start to finish in terms of going ahead and helping you out with those components here as well. So so in addition to that, to go ahead into the curriculum too, which is very unique on the program, I wanted to go ahead and first, show this slide quickly. So as you can see, we have a lot of business, leadership, finance classes, but we also have a total of 12 classes here, and 3 out of those 12, a fourth of them are electives, anywhere from a travel course to advanced finance, marketing, energy contracts, renewable energy management, so really a wide spectrum with that. And specifically, Dr. Hussein, I'd love to get a little bit of your take on how does the curriculum you feel offer a global perspective on energy? And I guess on that note, why do you think that is something that is important for international students to learn?
When it comes to energy, my personal opinion is that we are sharing almost the same globe. We live in a village. So anybody who's working that is an energy professional anywhere around the globe, or wants to be an energy professional anywhere around the globe, will more or less have to speak the same language. We're dealing with major companies, we're dealing with small companies, and if a person enrolls in the GEM program, given its international perspective, then that international experience is already implied. They will have the bird eye view of how things are done within the United States or Europe, for example, as opposed to China, as opposed to South Africa. And this is very important, again, because we communicate on daily basis. Even if I work, for example, with a company in Arabia, I need to communicate with companies, energy companies that are US-based or European-based, and so on and so forth. So given that the holistic perspective that the GEM program gives, I think it would be very interesting and very attractive to international students to enroll in.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that can sometimes, I think, be overlooked too. And I'd be curious to get a little bit of your take on this as well. Is actually you're currently working in Calgary in Alberta, right? As far as being professor there, and we've noticed, I think, a big, at least oil and gas specifically, a much bigger portion of oil and gas in the U.S. is going ahead and being, frankly, exported. And I know a lot of it, to Canada, other regions there too. And, with that, then exported to, anywhere from, India, where we know there may be like a new middle class, so to speak, that are having their first cars or first other different, vehicles or parts of their home that are using that. So I think that it's just becoming more and more interdependent, right? With that too. And I think that's something that you were highlighting on as well. And not just even with that sector, but also, even if it's like with the renewable side too, knowing how you need to go ahead. If you have like, a wind farm that you're building, you're probably not going to have a Toyota Prius drag a 50-foot windmill, right? It has to go currently on that'd be pretty difficult, right? A lot of torque. So it has to go on, on a large, 18-wheeler, so to speak, or other that. So there's always a lot of moving parts, and knowing how to communicate with everyone, regardless of what industry you're in, it's just so important to understand that perspective. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And actually, kind of on that note too, with your class specifically, Dr. Hussein, can you give some specific examples or case studies of like case studies or projects in your GEM 6300 course that you think maybe some prospective students would be interested in hearing about?
Yes. So I make it a point to make sure that I give international perspective in all the projects and the assignments that I give to the students. So for example, when we discuss the hydropower generation stations, some of the assignments were looking at Itaipu Dam in South America, the Guri Dam in Venezuela, and I had examples of the Renaissance Dam that is being under construction right now and should be up and running in Ethiopia. So these are some examples on the hydropower generation, but I also look at the geothermal energy generation in Japan. We looked at the wind farms in China, and China is going really very strong on wind energy and other renewable energies, including solar energy. And I always encourage the students when they choose their project to choose a project not necessarily in the US. They can choose it anywhere else around the globe and maybe project from numbers that are available within US DOE, which is the Department of Energy, because the beauty of the US is they actually capture all their numbers and they make them available for everybody. But yet we can still use these numbers to predict how much energy was invested, for example, in a hydropower station in China, based on the numbers that are available within the DOE on a similar project in the US. So the students will feel like they're looking at the US, but at the same time, they're looking at China, but at the same time also looking at South America. And that is the kind of intertwining that I intend for it to happen in my class, and I'm sure it happens in all other classes as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's so interesting, with the examples of Japan, some of the other regions of like hydropower and some other examples. I'm actually curious on that note, since you currently are teaching a semester in China right now, is that correct?
The plan is, yes, I'll be involved in teaching a course within the China University of Petroleum in the East, which is in Qingdao, the city that I'm currently residing in. And there might be also another opportunity to teach a course in Beijing. Again, it adds up to the experience, and you can't imagine how eager the students in China to learn about what's happening elsewhere around the globe. It's very interesting experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm curious, since you have been there for a little bit, has your perspective at all in terms of energy policy or China's, let's say, initiative to develop renewables versus, if I'm not mistaken, I think aren't they one of the largest, if not the largest, coal users in the entire, versus all the other continents, maybe it's because of their size. But has there been anything kind of surprising on any of those notes since you have been there that you've seen firsthand in terms of energy?
Actually, when you fly over China, you will see the number of hydropower stations, and you can see it from the airplane, and you'll see also the solar energy farms. It's very interesting seeing when you look at it from an outer perspective, and you see how big the volume is. It was a very fruitful experience for me. I really enjoyed it just flying over China. Mind you, having to know more about it when you study and we teach it to the students. China is going very strong on energy utilization, not only coal, but also diversifying their energy options. They have the largest wind generation stations, and I think soon they will have the largest solar energy stations, and they have lots and lots of hydropower stations. So it's not always coal. They're growing on coal, but they're growing on many other energy projects. And I think students in the US and elsewhere around the world should know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, my point with the coal too was that I think it just shows how diverse they are, with that as well, is that they understand the needs of some of the current citizens and everything with the technology there, but also understand the long-term future of developing the renewables too, which, as you mentioned, you can see up from 30,000 feet in the air. So, which is really fascinating. So, no, thank you so much for that perspective. And also too, something I wanted to talk a little more about as well is the program's competency model that we have here, which is pretty unique. So, I think you can almost break it down to a trifecta, so to speak, in terms of the three of the more important areas you're going to learn in the program. That's leading and managing, really the business acumen, and the energy expertise in your specific area. And these are just a few bullet points on each one, but a lot of our classes will go ahead and encompass these specific features here in it to go ahead and help you be a better leader now and in the future. So that's something that we try to make sure trickles down from our advisory council to our faculty all the way to the students here. And actually on that note too as well, since GEM does teach about the renewables, utilities, oil and gas, the entire energy spectrum here, Dr. Hussein, I was hoping you could elaborate a little more on why specifically it's beneficial for GEM students to learn about how all the major energy fields work together versus just concentrating on one specific sector that they may just be in.
As I always tell my students when I teach, I always tell them that there is no one single solution to our energy need and energy demand. There is no silver bullet there. All different types of energy have to work together in order to produce the amount of energy that we're looking to utilize currently and in the future. So fossil fuels are not going to disappear anytime soon. People have to understand that. We still need to use coal. We still need to use oil and gas. We still will be using more and more of solar energy, different renewable energies. There will be also more nuclear power generation stations in the future. We can't get rid of any of these energy systems. But the idea is, how can we control the environmental impact and reduce the footprint of energy utilization when it comes to coal, for example, fossil fuels. Coal, as an example, you can equip the coal power generation station with electrostatic precipitators that would clean the particulate matter from the atmosphere. You can have absorption columns for SO2 and different type of contaminant gases, including the SOx and NOx and so on and so forth. The idea is we are allowed to use energy as long as we know how to reduce the environmental impact of the given energy system, and that's very important. And the students need to know that. And I come from perspective of an energy person because I work with enhanced oil recovery systems. We try to discover new methods to improve oil recovery from formation, including oil gas as well. But at the same time, I also come from an environmental perspective because I work on wastewater treatment and I also work on air pollution control. So I bring all that expertise and I try to build an understanding with the students and let them know that we don't live in utopia. We will still be using fossil fuels, and we have to be responsible on how we use our fossil fuels. And the solutions are there. We just have to implement them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so interesting too, because, well, actually here in Colorado, we are just as heavily regulated in terms of oil and gas as any other state in the country. And I know that the oil and gas industry, depending on who you talk to, can, may or may not get the best reputation at times, or fossil fuels too. But I think one thing that we are starting to see, and we have many students who are in the oil and gas field and are very proud to have them as well, is that the oil and gas industry is becoming so much more technically driven to be environmentally safe and find better ways to go ahead and reduce that footprint, in addition to being safe for its workers as well. So I think that's absolutely something that is correct. With that too, is that as technology increases in general, it also increases on the safety or the the ecological or environmental impact too. With that specific research you're doing. So that's really important and very interesting to keep in mind. And also here, in addition to that, I wanted to go ahead and give a couple examples here of some international students. So these are just 5 examples. There's many more that we've had here that students, we had Saeed, who worked was a regional service director, and now is a founder and CEO of a consulting company, does energy consulting all over Europe and the UAE. Sun Yang, who works for the U.S. Department of Energy. I know Dr. Hussein was referencing them earlier. We've had a few students do that, and now is working for the Prosperity Fund Energy and low carbon development for the British Embassy in Beijing. Speaking of, reducing carbon of your carbon footprint, so to speak. Also, we've had others from the UK, Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, and many others. So these are just a couple examples here that we have, and as I mentioned, there are many more as well. Also here too, I want to give a quick example of a few different position changes that students have had here, because actually gathering some data of over 400 students and alumni here, in fact, that about 55% of our students by the time they graduate have received a promotion or a new job opportunity. And here are some examples of that, from reservoir engineer to VP of development. I know I was actually at a conference here a couple weeks ago and talked to a couple people in Maen that are now in VP positions that we have, others that have gone into more leadership, consulting, starting their own firms. So there's a lot of great success stories as far as that return on your investment, which I know is important on many different fronts. So I wanted to give a few examples of some different fields here that we've had with students. And also here, before my last question that we'll have here for Dr. Hussein, I want to highlight a couple examples of companies that students currently or have worked for. Speaking of Calgary and Max Energy, I know we've had alumni from the power and utility realm, as well as GE, General Electric. On the renewable side, the Department of Energy, I know we highlighted one earlier for a student here, Sun, who works in the U.S. Embassy. We also have ExxonMobil, Ghana National Petroleum Council, ArcelorMittal, Liberia, and there's many more. So these ones highlighted are just examples of those that are working on it with international companies, and there's many more. The last question here that I'd like to kind of pick your brain on, Dr. Hussein, is about the trends in the energy industry as well, because it moves at a very fast pace, like technology, right? With that. So I'm curious, what is your take on trends that you anticipate happening in the energy field, let's say on a global scale, in the next 5 to 10 years? And on that note, how do you think a program like GEM can help prepare students for those changes?
Right. I think our energy demand is growing and will still be growing in the next 5 to 10 years. And it's growing in all aspects. So it's not only growing on the renewables, it's growing on the nuclear, it's growing on the non-renewables as well. And as a result, the students will have to be trained in all aspects of management. For example, they have to learn how to manage a coal company as good as they learn how to manage a nuclear power facility, or they have to manage a renewable energy resource. And in my class specifically, I dig and teach them about the basic science on fossil fuel extraction. What's the difference between secondary, tertiary recovery, for example? What are the new trends in tertiary recovery of oil and gas? And then at the same time, we discuss the nuclear reactions, what's happening at the atom level and beyond, even the nucleus level. So they understand the basics when it comes to photovoltaics, hydropower generation station, the ocean power generation station, how different ocean power stations work. They don't all use the very same type of energy. Every station has its own target energy that it utilizes. And we have to provide that perspective so students can be flexible. They can move from one power company to another power company without feeling a lack of confidence. They have to be well prepared. And this is what I believe the GEM program is doing.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that is really a very unique perspective to share about as well, with all the different areas, globally, and trying to anticipate what those changes are. And I think that's to highlight another reason why it's so valuable to go ahead and have faculty members that are really currently in the field. I would even say about maybe anywhere from 75 to 85% are still, actively involved full time, work in the field or research like yourself. So, so important to really stay current that way too. And that's one of the ways we ensure that our students are able to go ahead and do so. So thank you so much with sharing that. And then also here too, as far as another component I want to go ahead and quickly touch on with the program, we'll go ahead and deal more with some of the onboarding that we have here and student help as well. So as you can see here, we have a few different elements here as far as the process from acceptance until graduation. We have a dedicated student affairs manager here as well, Michelle, who's wonderful, who helps students from the time they're accepted all the way to graduation and anything in between with the cohorts, logistics, scheduling, those components. So there really is a lot of guided support here that our students have as well. And of course, too, in terms of tuition, it is the same just about for students that are in Denver or that are maybe in Ghana or in South Korea, so to speak. The only difference is there are $450 for international fees, so the total tuition comes to $54,450 US dollars, of course, for students that are internationally based, and I'd say maybe about $1,200 to $1,400 for books as well too for the entire program. Now, all that money's not due up front. As you can see on the right-hand side, there are payment plans. I know a lot of students use tuition reimbursement, or you can pay as you go. Now, one thing I did want to highlight, because I get asked a lot about scholarships, financial aid. For financial aid, you do need to be a U.S. resident or permanent resident. And if you have any questions about how that works, you can look at that link there, or just Google, financial aid or FAFSA for some details on that. But just, something that I'm sure is helpful for everyone to see here. And we also work with a lot of international companies with tuition reimbursement too on that front. So for applying to the program here, I want to go over a couple details. The first is that there's only a $75 application fee for international applicants here. And the nice thing is you do not have to do everything at once in terms of the application process. As part of my role as the Assistant Director of Recruitment here with the GEM program at CU Denver, I will go ahead and help with some of the essay questions, overlooking the resume or CV, recommendation letters, some of those components. And also, too, depending on experience, we may be able to waive the GMAT or GRE if you have at least 5 years of energy experience as well. One other question I get asked a lot about is with the TOEFL or English competency exam, and that's really on a case-by-case basis in terms of waiving that. It depends on the language of your bachelor's degree or master's and a couple other factors as well. One other thing that is nice here, too, is that in terms of your transcripts, like I actually had a student who studied at a school in Africa recently, and because those transcripts were already translated to English, we were able to go ahead and do a free evaluation for them here on our own scale. So you do not have to have a service like WES or ECE, which does their own evaluation on a 4.0 scale. If it's translated English, we can go ahead and have our international admissions department take a look at it from there to help. Now, also a couple other quick notes here in terms of your resume. Of course, you want to focus on energy experience if possible. And the essay questions here, too, are not difficult. There's only 4, and they're about 1 to 2 paragraphs each. And letters of recommendation are typically going to be a colleague or former or current like supervisor at work as well, which is encouraged. Now, after your file is complete here, I did mention that we have a transcript evaluation process here that we do for free. They just have to be translated to English in terms of your transcripts. And we also have an international admissions office that will go ahead and help with paperwork. And another common question I get is with issuing visas. So with the way that's set up here, I don't have all the details on it, but what I recommend is that, for example, I'll show that we have a class coming up on July 12th, but I strongly recommend students to have their files done at least 2 months beforehand, especially if you currently live abroad, because there will most likely be some paperwork to fill out with different visas that will allow you to travel here for our Cohort Weekend that we have here. And there's a total of 6 times during 18 months when you would come here for that. And they will go ahead and assist you with that process. But it's always nice to have a longer runway, so to speak, so you can go ahead and have your questions answered, deal with that. And as I mentioned, we've had 21 cohorts here. The majority of those cohorts, we've had international students. So we're very familiar with how this process works, and we'll help guide you through it. But it's something that you want to make sure you still have enough time to do, so it's not too crunched, so to speak. Also, as well, as far as applying, as you can see here with the application process, our link right there will go ahead and take you to a page to create a profile and then start your online application. And as far as a couple next steps or recommendations we have, one is maybe start thinking about who you want your recommenders to be. And in our application system, we have a place you can put their names and email in, and it gets sent to them. So maybe give them a little bit of advance notification. Also, for requesting transcripts, depending on the school, some may be more difficult than others, but you want to look into that sooner than later. And if they do electronic transcripts, those are probably the best route because they get processed sooner and they can even be sent directly to me as well that we have. And really, with the entire application process, it should maybe take about 2 to 4 weeks for international students. So not too long at all that we would go ahead and have for that. Sorry, excuse me a second. Here, as far as we have a little bit of time for a Q&A section and a couple questions here as well that I'm sure students would like to hear Dr. Hussein talk about. Before that, though, I want to go ahead and let students know that if you do go ahead and apply by March 6th, we will be waiving that $75 application fee for students that are internationally based. And I put May 15th here as an application deadline as the absolute latest. I would say even probably by earlier in May, you want to have your file done just to go ahead and give yourself enough time with everything as well. Now here, I know, as I mentioned before, we have a couple of questions from our audience here that I'm sure we want to go ahead and have Dr. Hussein kind of go ahead and talk about. So I will go ahead and I'll grab a couple of questions from students, and then we will have the webinar end in a few moments here. All right, so it looks like the first question we actually have here is a student asking, Dr. Hussein, what do you hear about from students who are looking at the GEM program versus maybe an MBA, and why you think a GEM program might be more beneficial for someone who's in the energy field?
I believe the GEM program is very specialized to energy, and that is an asset given how much energy is contributing to the GDP of a country, whether you're using that energy or you're generating that energy or you're importing that energy from another country. It's a lot of money that is involved in this business. And our program is direct to how we manage energy, how we are able to manage energy, and we produce or we train experts in managing energy systems. And if I may give an example, I was very, very pleased with one of the students that approached me, and he was cool and cold, approaching me saying that, Dr. Hussein, I had actually an interview with a company that is a wind power generation company. The same week we covered wind generation in my class. And I was able to communicate with the managers and the engineers to the extent that they were very excited about what I was saying. And now I'm hired by that company and I have a job. So this exactly answers to that question, why GEM as opposed to MBA. MBA is not going to train you how to respond to questions that are about how do we generate wind energy? Where does the energy come from? And how do we, what's the difference between a certain wind turbine and a different wind turbine, and the capabilities of the different wind turbines? We do that in the GEM program, and I don't think that they do that in other MBA programs.
No, that's a great story, and wow, fortuitous timing from that student as well. We should put that on our website, maybe, actually.
I think
that's great. I think that's a great example too. And what I often tell students, and I think your story there, which is wonderful, really reiterates and brings this point home, is that if you are truly looking to sector into the energy field or stay in it, whether that's with a wind turbine company, petroleum, utilities, having a program that is 100% energy focused on all those components will give you a unique aspect and advantage in terms of what you'll learn and a skill set that maybe a more broad MBA program won't. Whereas, let's say if you weren't sure what you wanted to do and maybe marketing or maybe something else random, but not sure it's energy, well, then maybe something more broad makes sense. But yeah, no, that's a great example there. And actually, we have time, looks like, for one more question here too. So a student asked about AACSB recognition, because they noticed that our program, we are AACSB accredited in terms of the business school here, and they want to get your take on, I guess, the importance of that designation, because it is one that is international. So I was curious if we can get a little bit of your take on that in terms of why you think that's important.
I am aware of many universities that have been in the business for a long, long time in different places around the globe, and they seek the international accreditation. And this is something very important for them. They're willing to put the money, they're willing to put the effort to ensure that they have it, even or despite of their long-term being as universities very well established and they have a reputation. So I think this is a very important component for the GEM program, and we do have it. So this should be an asset and should entice more and more students and learners to be part of this program.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know it's a recognition too that I believe only the top 5% of business schools in the entire world have. And one, I think that's important, that's international. So whether you're in the United States or, let's say in Saudi Arabia, it's a destination that's recognized worldwide, which is helpful. So, well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. And thank you so much, Dr. Hussein, for your participation, a lot of your wonderful stories and expertise. I know it's been appreciated so much in our 10 years of program and many more that we have. And I'm sure from everyone who's viewing this today and will view this in the future. And I just want to thank you again and hope that everyone here has a wonderful rest of your day. And lastly, too, before we go here, I did want to go ahead and share a screenshot one more time of my information here. So in case you go ahead and have any questions on the program, please go ahead and feel free to reach out to me directly. At the bottom there, you can see my phone number, my work phone number here, as well as my email. Any questions on the program, application process, please feel free to reach out. And once again, thank you so much to Dr. Hussein for his participation today, and thank you so much to everyone who joined us as well. Take care, and everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you.